I know there's going to be a few more. Just in case, if you just joined in the last few minutes, my name is Holger, Director of London Institute of Photography, and I'm happy to have you here on board. Tom, how are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, a bit nervous, but I'm all good.
You're going to be, you see, I mean, we used to have this, pre-COVID-19, we used to run those talks in our classroom. And then afterwards, or even sometimes before, we could have had a drink, really. Yeah, I really hope, because we just realized you don't really live too far away from where I live, and also like where the school is. So I really hope that post-COVID we can all meet up and like for a proper drink in the pub. Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. So you're currently based in London. You said you're based in Tottenham. Yeah. And so we've got a Tom, you put together a really interesting presentation of your work. And I also have prepared a few questions that are going to guide us basically through this presentation. Yeah. So let's begin. So it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into photography. How did this journey actually start for you?
So yeah, hello. Thank you, Holger, for the great introduction. Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for joining. I've seen a few familiar faces on the chat, so thanks for joining. So my name's Tom Cockram. I originally grew up in Jersey, and I was always into art at kind of school. Wasn't great at school, and then narrowly got into kind of into college, and that's where I tried out photography. I tried out a few different things on my art course, but photography was where I kind of got a good grade, as I wasn't getting great grades in anything else. So it gave me the confidence to kind of give it a go at university. I'll flip through some old work here as well as we go. So I went to university in Manchester. I chose Manchester because mainly because of the music scene there. I was very into my bands, and yeah, I kind of went there because of that, really. So it's a great city, a massive contrast from Jersey, being from such a small island. And yeah, it was a great course. It was mainly kind of a theory-based course, which was great, but I spent a lot of my time going out and going to gigs, but then I ended up starting to shoot gigs and bands. So here's a couple of shots here from kind of early days, really. Started shooting bands for various different publications, like Vice, Nylon, and various other kind of publications, mainly to get into gigs for free. I had to had like 3 other different jobs at the time, working at like Pizza Express, a fruit store, and doing flyering for gigs as well. And then I'd do all this kind of unpaid work of bands and kind of live gigs and stuff like that. Yeah, so I kind of was really interested in my music and was kind of just trying to shoot and experiment with that. This is one of the first shoots I ever did with lighting. I remember being so nervous, a bit nervous like I am now, doing this shoot. So yeah, it was quite, yeah, I kind of just experimented shooting bands. And then I went on a trip to New York, which was quite a pivotal trip in our second year. I took my digital camera and a film camera. And as like a keen photography student, I was kind of shooting everything you could kind of see. And I got lost on my first day from my group. Everyone was going to Coney Island and I got lost, and I ended up just walking around New York and started taking portraits of people. And that's where kind of I really started to fall in love with portraiture. Yeah, I kind of had this digital camera which was trying to take loads of shots on, and then I had the film camera which I was being really precious with, going up to people and shooting portraiture. So that was a big kind of like moment of kind of learning what I love to shoot. And then later on in my second year, I met a photographer, Tom Van Shelven, who's kind of an advertising photographer now. And he was starting out at the time, and we're both shooting for Vice magazine. So I met him at a gig, and he asked me to come assist him. And that's where my kind of photography journey kind of started, really. I started assisting him and a few other photographers for about 4 to 5 years, and that's where I really learned how to kind of learn about photography, learned so much more than I did at university, how to light stuff, how to talk to clients, and most importantly, how to invoice people. And I was doing that all throughout my the end of my second year, my third year. So as I was coming out of the third year, I was assisting loads. We were like traveling Europe in the end, and of my third year. So it was an amazing experience, and it's great that I kind of I did that as I was finishing. I finished my degree, but I was kind of really focused on the assisting, and always thought that would kind of be the way into the industry. And this was all up in Manchester. And then I eventually moved down to London after building up a bit of a portfolio and a client base in Manchester. I finally moved down to London, and after I think in the first year, I started getting a few clients down here, but I was mainly working with people up north. And then I met an agent, Virgilia, who's my first agent. And now I'm repped with a probation agency, and I know Matt's on here as well, so hi to Matt. But yeah, so that's a kind of, in short, my kind of journey into photography, and that's some of my old stuff, what I kind of started shooting through there, really.
I see. And could you? It's really interesting that you said that you shot a lot of gigs for free at the beginning. Yeah. I know a lot of people have a very strong opinion about this, and for me, this was also something completely normal. You know, particularly maybe if you have a background, maybe in editorial photography, and maybe also like in fashion, where a lot of things basically are based on connections and building new connections, etc. So for me personally, this was always a completely normal thing to ultimately, you know, this was an investment basically to ultimately get your foot in the door. Did you ever regret this, to shoot a lot for free, or would you recommend this to the new generation of photographers?
I think it's really hard. I definitely think everyone should be paid for what they do. But I think when you're starting out, you should be willing to shoot for free where you can. And if it's not for like a big client, and I think in the music world, like shooting gigs and stuff like that, I was paid. I would say I was paid where I could. Where I could be, but it was mainly for free because it was like a live gig. But yeah, it kind of opened a lot of doors for me. So at that time, it kind of felt the right thing to do. But yeah, I definitely think everyone should be paid for their work. Definitely.
Yeah. And at our school, we talk a lot about finding your style, finding your thought, or finding your brand. Yeah. And in a lot of the courses, and particularly like in the professional photography course that we run here, this is one of the main focuses. And can you maybe talk a little bit about your creative journey? Were you always drawn into portrait photography, or did you maybe at one point explore different types of photography, different genres?
Yeah, I've always been interested in portraiture, I'd say. I have tried a lot of different things. I tried a lot of still life stuff because that was like a favor job with agencies. They'd be like, "Oh, Tom, can you shoot this kind of whiskey bottle?" And that led on to shooting almost campaign stuff for still life stuff. So I have tried to do a bit of that, but I didn't really feel that engaged with that. But I've always been interested in portraits and kind of people, really. I feel like I'm a bit of a people person, so people's stories and characters, really. So yeah, that's really what's drawn me into photography, and especially like on that trip in New York, that's what really kind of drew me into photography is portraiture, I'd say. So here's some early stuff as well. I'm flicking through now.
I mean, New York is just such an incredibly fantastic place to take pictures. I mean, there's such an incredibly positive vibe. Yeah. So I think if you know, like when I went there, like, you know, when I was a young photographer, and you know, at that time you still used like maps to find your way around. So this was like pre-smartphone.
Yeah.
you only have to wait like literally like for 30 seconds until someone would approach you and ask you if they can help you, and they would actually bring you there. Yeah, so there's an incredibly positive vibe in New York. Yeah, and
Yeah,
some real characters.
100%. It was an amazing place to go on like a photography trip, and kind of, yeah, really opened our eyes a bit when, yeah, coming from like Manchester, haven't really traveled abroad much. So yeah, it was an amazing place to go.
Mm. And I know that you photograph a lot of athletes, yeah, very often like in a commercial content or context. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about how you approach this? Do you tackle this in any other different way than a normal portrait? How does it actually work? Do you have maybe a background in sports? Well, I just kind of know because we just really realized that we're both really into running, yeah. And
Yeah.
can you maybe talk a little bit about that? Maybe if you have a passion for sport, does it maybe open maybe gateways to those athletes?
Yeah, definitely got an interest in sport. I'm a big runner myself. I'm into my cycling and surfing, all, yeah, kind of adventure sports really. But yeah, the way I approach shooting athletes, I just try to do as much preparation as possible at first, really, I'd say. Usually you get so little kind of time to shoot athletes. It's usually a very small window. So I kind of try to do as much prep on location, a bit of background about the athlete. And yeah, I find it really engaging, kind of being like watching someone lost in their sport. It's really engaging and kind of running around, capturing moments. So yeah, I guess that the approach would be just as much preparation as possible, because you don't really know what you're going to turn up. So this was a shoot of Anthony Joshua in his training gym, and he was in like a training camp, so it was quite intense and kind of running around, and you know, you get a very short window in that. So yeah, I guess just as much preparation as I can, if possible, really.
Hmm. And can you maybe about Joshua? I know this series really well. Can you maybe talk us a little bit about how a job like this would actually work? So did you get it, for example, through your agency? How does the contact with who was maybe the client, or what was the purpose? How about lighting? Are there considerations like styling, hair, makeup, or something like this? It would be really interesting, maybe if you could talk us very briefly through this job.
Yeah, so the one with Anthony Joshua, the second time I shot him, which was for DAZN, it's like an new online sports platform coming to the UK. And yeah, it's funny how it came around. It came around through an old client we worked with for Sony, actually, at an agency, and he's moved now to DAZN as head of design. So he kind of got me in for this project. This is a project from a series of about British boxing, and they knew I was into boxing. That's another sport I'm very into, and I've shot quite a lot of. And that's kind of how it came around. They seen that a lot of boxing stuff being posted and thought I was fitting for the job. And then yeah, the terms of like the production of the job for this, it was quite low key. There was a lot of lighting. We travelled up in a van. I know John's on the thing. So me, John, and my other assistant Mikey at the time, we drove up the night before and set up quite like a big lighting setup to shoot some portraits of him. And we're kind of given this like small window, which was supposed to be first thing in the morning, but then we had to watch him like train. We watched him do his training, and I shot that, which is something they wanted as well. But the main objective was to shoot kind of portraits of him, which I'll show you a little bit later. Yeah, and so we watched him train, and we shot that. And then at the end of the day, we're talking like 9 p.m. We've been there since 9 a.m. We get this 10-minute window and still have to drive back to London. So that's how it was. There's no hair and makeup for this kind of job. No kind of like real production. it was just me and 2 assistants and a load of lighting in a van. And then the other side of things can be like a real big production where you've got like lots of assistants, a producer, hair and makeup, styling. So it kind of varies the different levels of production I do really on shoots.
I see. Yeah. And how does it? You said that in your own personal work, in your own personal work, you photograph a lot of sports as well. And so I assume that that you're going to get those assignments on the back of it. You know? So most of the time, it's that you define your brands by your personal work, and then you're going to get similar jobs on the back of it. Can you maybe talk about the relationship between your personal work and the jobs that you're going to get out of it, or maybe even jobs that you want to get out of it? Yeah. Do you just shoot whatever you find interesting, or do you have a strategy?
Yeah, I don't so much have a strategy, but yeah, I definitely just find shoot stuff I find interesting. So whether it be a sport or kind of types of portraits, that's what kind of I'm drawn to really. So with the personal thing, I think the boxing has been my biggest kind of like ongoing personal thing. And yeah, and then from that, I've definitely kind of been booked from that kind of work. So it definitely helps play a part in what you get booked for. So I definitely encourage people to go out and shoot what they want to shoot, so whether it be like skateboarding or fashion. Yeah, go out and kind of shoot that, try it out, and then that's hopefully where you're going to get picked up and kind of seen really.
I see. Yeah. And I can see that there are lots of surfing pictures on your webpage. Are you into surfing yourself?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm a keen surfer. I was lucky enough to grow up in Jersey, which is surrounded by the sea. And yeah, I kind of do miss being in the sea and surfing. So any kind of chance I do get going surfing on a job or like tying it into a job. This was from a project I did about Icelandic surfing, and I made a film, but that was a personal project because I'm into surfing. So yeah, definitely try to tie it in where I can, but I think I just need to move near the sea and then it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah. And when you produce this personal work, is it always from this personal experience, for example, that you know those surfers, maybe they're friends or acquaintances, or do you sometimes do like casting? Because I know you're also into some of your series are also, I would say, I would describe them maybe as sports lifestyle photography. That means they look quite candid. You know, there are great moments. There's a positive energy. There are positive vibes. It looks really quite relaxed yet fast paced and so on. Yeah. Having said that, very often to produce something that looks that effortless, this actually is a lot of work. Again, you know, like you need to get some models, they need to look great. Yeah. All those kind of things, you need to keep them in the right mood. Yeah. How do you tackle this? That is a question that comes up really quite often here. To produce something on a professional level, something that actually looks candid, but ultimately the photographer can ensure that the level is professional. How do you tackle that?
Yeah, I think like setting an atmosphere on the set, kind of like quite a calm set, but quite energetic. Music's always good to kind of get everyone kind of feeling relaxed. Yeah, and just an atmosphere really is kind of the way that we kind of get people relaxed and kind of getting to know people, keeping it fun, not too kind of like intense. Really, so that's kind of way we kind of get models kind of relax, but like back to the question about casting for kind of personal projects and how I kind of navigate that. For instance, this is a still from the Icelandic surfing shoot, and that was just a lot of research done by myself and an art director, Stephen Owen. Yeah, so he and I came up with the idea about going to shoot this film, and we got in contact with this local surfer there called Ingo Olsen, kind of got into conversation, making sure he was right. We got a brand involved, but that was kind of because it was a personal project, self-funded. I would do all the work for that. But in a commercial project, you would have like a producer who would kind of then do like a casting for the right models. Then you would discuss the casting of models with like the client and get that kind of signed off. So that's the kind of different processes. When it's personal, it's kind of all done by yourself, really, if you can afford to pay for a producer as well, but it's usually done by yourself. And then when you have the budget on a commercial job, you have like production to kind of do that kind of stuff.
I see. That's really interesting. I noticed quite often that lifestyle photographers seem to be working as a team, maybe with another, well, not another photographer, but another creative, for example, who on the shoot takes a little bit away the focus on the camera. I've seen this really quite often, that there's you know, almost like a producer on set, who, you know, kind of engages the models, who kind of entertains the models, and whose role is to make sure that the mood and the vibe is just right. And as you said really, really rightly, that it's really quite effortless and, you know, not too focused, or maybe, yeah, maybe not too focused on the camera itself. Do you do it sometimes like that as well, or is it just mainly you and the models?
Yeah, usually it's mainly me and the models. Sometimes if we have the kind of budget for it, we have like an assistant director, say if there's a lot of movement we need or certain poses, and that comes from the film world. And that's the kind of a voice on the film world will be your second the second director, the second AD. And that person will be shouting out the kind of actions to the model, to the talent. And they'll be the kind of loud voice on set. But in photography, yeah, it usually comes from myself. But we kind of work as a team. I have like some great assistants around me as well. And we kind of all like go off each other to kind of get the best kind of performance from the talent, really. But yeah.
I see, yeah. And you've shot a really interesting project for it was about the Grenfell Tower. I remember seeing it here at the Truman Brewery, which is where we are based. And so as a team, we walked in, and I remember it was really powerful seeing all those faces staring at you. And can you talk us a little bit about, or through this project, how did it came into being? And particularly, like, how did you get involved with the community as a photographer?
Yeah, so yeah, the Grenfell project is the most special project I've ever shot. Yeah, it's been it's an amazing thing to be asked to shoot. And how it first came about was from I got asked to direct a film for the charity Grenfell United. They asked us to shoot a kind of short film about the charity and about seeking justice for Grenfell. And so it's a big kind of shoot. We're shooting a lot of people from the tower who were there, and the bereaved, so victims and the bereaved, and people from the community. We shot, I think, over 60 people in a day, and it was a huge opportunity. A lot of these people hadn't even been in the press before. So I decided to, in between takes, to photograph everyone's portraits, as I'm mainly a photographer, but the main goal was to shoot this film. So I was shooting these portraits, and yeah, I kind of sat on them after the film, and yeah, I just wanted to do something more than just for them to live on like a website. I felt like there was a duty to kind of do something with them. And so I went away and spoke to the charity and said about this idea of an exhibition. And then after the first shoot, the film shoot, we got quite a few portraits, but we still needed to photograph a lot more people from the community. So we did another 2 kind of sittings of people from the community and people we kind of haven't shot. And then turned it into an exhibition, which you've seen at the Truman Brewery. The reason why I wanted it at the Truman Brewery is somewhere quite central to spread the message about never forgetting Grenfell. and I got the graphic artist to do the type for the posters, at the graphic artist Anthony Burrell. So that was super impactful, working with him as well to kind of spread the message. And then very kindly, I'll just skip a few, we got given 3 billboards around the city, around London, to use for free, to put up my images, to promote the exhibition. So yeah, it's been a really special project. I'm still involved in with the Grenfell community as well. This is some campaign stuff which I linked up the charity with a creative duo from an advertising agency, Conrad and Alex, and they come up with ideas when Grenfell United need to kind of get stuff in the press, or they're fighting anything in with the kind of case to seek justice for Grenfell. So this was some projections which they came up with the idea, and I would go along and kind of photograph it and help them behind the scenes. But it's kind of still kind of involved linking them with this. This is one they also projected onto the House of Parliament here. And then that's the tower on the left, and then another tower which was still on safe without sprinklers. So these really important kind of messages. So I've definitely been involved in other projects. This is another project they did, which was going green for Grenfell on one of the anniversaries, which was hugely successful. And then another person I'd like to shout out as well. So someone I met through the Grenfell project is a lady called Fruza. I think she's on, so hello Fruza. And she's also a photographer. She helped me in the exhibition, and we've been in touch ever since. She also assists me on some jobs, and she's doing a project I wanted to shout out on this platform called Golden Ashes, and it's a book about Grenfell, and she's shooting portraits. So you can go and find that at www.goldandashes.squarespace.com. So yeah, that's a little shout out to Firuza there. But yeah, that's the kind of my involvement still with Grenfell, and a bit about the exhibition now.
Do you think more is gonna come out of this project? Because I think Grenfell, I think it was the first anniversary, really nothing to celebrate, obviously, but I think just recently, so it's still in everybody's mind. Do you see this continuing or going further?
I'll definitely be involved. I try to be involved with the community as much as possible, with a few certain people in the community, and whenever there's any ideas, which Conrad and Alex have been coming up with, kind of more creative ideas, have been involved in that. So yeah, I'm definitely always there for them to kind of help out. But yeah, I don't think there'd be anything I'd more do with the kind of people or an exhibition, because I feel like I've done my part there with the exhibition. But I'm definitely there always for like support and kind of to help with any ideas that they're doing in their community as well.
I see. Yeah. Amazing. I mean, I remember seeing this, this really vividly, seeing this here at the Truman Brewery. The next thing I would like to talk to you about is your project with Johnny Walker and with Jude Law. Can you tell us a little bit about how you approach this photographically? Again, what I always find really interesting is, how did you get the job? How did they got in contact? How was it? How about the production, which really looked very complex? Yeah, can you talk us a little bit through maybe the story behind it? Yeah, and also how you produced it.
Yeah. So yeah, this was quite a funny story how the actual job came about. It first came about from shooting a very small campaign for Umbro, like a sports brand up in Manchester. And the client was in New York at the time. He asked me to go around Manchester photographing like cityscapes and all kinds of different details of Manchester for the Man City football team, like shop window. So it wasn't a huge job, but it was very exciting for me. I was just starting out, and it was paid well, and I did everything I could to kind of make it as good as possible, overshooting it almost, and going out with the best light. I did that job. I seen the shots in the window, which was very exciting. And then a few years later on, I got this call from the same guy who'd moved agencies to a big advertising agency called Anomaly in New York. And yeah, he told me about this job he had photographing Jude Law and a few other people for this Johnny Walker campaign, which was in London, and then the Caribbean, which was yeah, I nearly fell off my chair when he did tell me this. It was quite, it's like the biggest job I ever kind of heard about or done myself. So I was just like super excited. But yeah, the production and everything was a different level I'd never been used to. It was directed by Jake Scott, and a DOP was John Matheson. So like proper legends in the film world. It was like walking onto like a feature film. I've been on like music videos and stuff like that when I was assistant, but nothing ever like this. And it was just me and an assistant for the first one. It was yeah, it was really special project, and it kind of, after doing this campaign, it definitely kind of got me more into that commercial world. And then I did the second one, and I had to do a bit more of a formal approach for that. I was asked to do a treatment, and because I did the first one, it put me in good stead. And that's something I have to do for any job now, any commercial job. You have to do a pitch and a treatment, which is kind of showing why you're right for the job, and kind of your imagery and how your approach to kind of how you do the job. So yeah, here's a few shots from the second one where I had a lot more time with the talent. The first one was kind of, I was just chucked onto it, and this one I was a lot more part of the creative. We had time with the kind of stars of the shoot as well. Yeah, so yeah, that was a very special job, one I'll always remember.
And was the Katerina's asking if they posed for you in every shot, or if you were shooting while you were filming, was there a difference between part one and part two?
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't the access was very different from one and two. So the first one, I wasn't being able to direct the talent as much. So I'd have to be shooting a lot more on the film. So it felt a bit more kind of like behind the scenes, which was an amazing way to shoot on these kind of amazing sets. So yeah, I was kind of having to like just be really cheeky and kind of get in and amongst it really, and annoy the DOP, and getting told off a few times. And then the second one, we had like real time to do so. You know, I kind of had time to do this shot, which was factored into the shoot. So yeah, they were very different, but yeah, both great.
Can I ask, because I've done this myself a few times, and I remember what was always a huge issue when I took photographs during the filming itself, was the shutter noise. And I mean, some people just got wild. They just got mad. How did you solve that problem?
Yeah, I was lucky they weren't recording loads of sound on the bits. That's usually the issue, and they can sometimes get you to use some massive like enclosure for the camera, which is kind of unusable. But yeah, we just had to be a bit careful. We definitely annoyed the sound recordist a bit, but yeah, you just have to kind of be as quiet on your toes, really.
Yeah. And then the second part, when you were able to direct them to, I just guess, well, just to step in a bit more and to really ask them to pose for the camera. How did that go? Was he a good model? Was he responsive? Was he easy? Was he fun to work with?
Yeah, definitely, like super professional. And yeah, Jude Law was kind of amazing to photograph. It was quite hard to take a bad photo of him. But yeah, it's a mixture of kind of shooting him when he was kind of relaxing. So this shot was kind of done. It was this kind of scene, and it was outside of Rome where his car breaks down in this old farm, out in like an old farmhouse, and he was just kind of chilling on the sofa. So it's just kind of seeing those opportunities, and that's something which is always really key on film shoots. So any shoot is just kind of seeing those moments and kind of reacting to them, not just standing around and getting told it's your time to shoot. It's kind of really important to kind of always be aware and engaged. So yeah, it was kind of a mixture of kind of directing the talent and having a time, and then kind of finding moments like this.
Mm. And you've photographed quite a few celebrities, including I've seen that you photographed Brian Eno, for example, or Paul Smith. When a job like this occurs, how do you approach it? Do you have a very strict time limit, for example, or do you have a really strict brief, or do you have a lot of creative freedom?
Yeah, it's always really varied, but usually it's very kind of small window. So for like this one with Paul Smith, it's like a 10-minute window of him showing us around the studio and shooting portraits. But the best way, and it's the same for all shoots really, is just the preparation. So doing as much preparation as possible. A good thing is like working out how they're shot, how sorry, how best they're shot. So like what kind of light really works with them, or what kind of angles. There might be something you see online which kind of really works with them, and kind of think of that and kind of doing that yourself on the shoot. So it's just as much a prep as possible, because usually you get like a very small window with like a celebrity's kind of busy schedule. Like I said about AJ before, this is the portrait we did at the end of the day with him, where we had 10 minutes. So it's just kind of being as prepped as possible, really, I'd say.
Mm. And when you shoot on location, let's say like the one with Smith, do you have time to set everything up, to light the location, to maybe use a lighting model, maybe one of your assistants, so that everything is ready for him to step in? How then does it work?
Yeah, like it's always so varied. So like the Anthony Joshua one, we had like a big setup, and it's set up. We had to set it up in one room and then drop it because we weren't in the right room, and put it up in another room. And sometimes it would just be me and natural light. The Paul Smith one, this is all shot with natural light. I still had an assistant there, but the light was good, so I just reacted to that. So we're kind of always prepared for anything on these kind of shoots. You take a lot with you, have a few things in the background to use. But yeah, it's always so varied, I'd say.
I see. And can you talk? Can you tell us a little bit about the Taylor Wessing portrait prize? Yeah. How did you get into it? And was it the first time applying for the prize?
Yeah, so I'd applied once before for this, and then my agents, Matt and Virgilia, kind of said I should apply again. They were encouraging all the photographers on the roster to do so. So I submitted this shot of Conor Benn, professional boxer, and this was from a personal project. I've been following him for quite a while, and I wanted to photograph him outside of boxing, kind of his life of outside of boxing, with his dog, which he was really close with, Levi. So we picked a location which is quite close to his house in Essex, and went and shot this kind of in between his busy like training camps. And yeah, we got a really like foggy kind of misty day, which really worked and made it quite an atmospheric portrait. And yeah, it was a super special moment, having the portrait kind of shortlisted for the exhibition, and to see it on the National Portrait Wall was amazing, really.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the development of the particular like the Taylor Wessing Photography Awards. I mean, this I guess now must be probably, I mean, definitely one of the biggest portrait photography prize in the world, maybe even the biggest. Yeah, and just every year it just attracts so much attention, the exhibition, and also so many submissions. I think I once read, I think they had like 10,000 submissions. I mean, just think about it, really, like the competition is so incredibly fierce. Yeah. Did you meet the judges at one point, or did you meet the organizers?
No, I didn't meet. I met a few of the organisers. Yeah, when we did like a little interview and stuff. But yeah, the competition is super, super fierce. It's I've not managed to get in since. I think you have to have the right project for them. They kind of have a certain style, which I think this kind of fitted in, and certain themes each year. So yeah, it's definitely an amazing portrait prize, and definitely something I'd love to try and get involved in again.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of I think it's over the years it's the critical voices got a bit louder. The based on the winner, a lot of people say that usually like in the listed images, yeah, or series, that's where you usually find the real diamonds, and the one that wins it maybe not so, because it's I think it is a lot about finding like common ground between the the judges, and it's almost like as if sometimes they try to find the smallest common denominator. That's then the one that they can all agree to, and that's then the one that actually wins the prize, I guess. Yeah, yeah. Did you experience anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's a great range of work there, but yeah, maybe sometimes they maybe pick a bit of like the safer kind of option, maybe. But there's some super interesting work there, and yeah, really enjoyed going to the shows there.
Yeah. And you mentioned a few times that you shoot video, maybe alongside the photo projects. Yeah, um, that's definitely a development over the last few years that photographers um, or some photographers need to know a little bit about video, that they need to be able to maybe produce a video alongside their photography work. Yeah. How does it work for you? Do you get a lot of, let's say, like video requests parallel to your photo shoots?
Yeah, it's becoming more common, more and more with most briefs. Really, the client wants the campaign to have one voice, so they'll really prefer a photographer who can direct as well, and it's something I'm really trying to move in slowly. As I'm predominantly a photographer, but I'm definitely trying to do more and more directing. This is a few kind of film stills from projects which are up on my website. Yeah, and I'm kind of really keen on doing so, but I'm kind of building up slowly. It's I have huge respect for the kind of directing world. I want to take my time with that and progress that and develop slowly through that. But it's definitely becoming more and more kind of common to be asked to shoot, even if it's just a GIF or like a 30-second film for a campaign these days, definitely.
Mm. And are you then the director of photography, or do you have a cameraman that does it, and you're just concentrating on the direction itself?
It all depends on the budget, really. But if it's a good job and you've got the budget, I'll be directing, and then I'll have a DOP who will organize the lighting, and then there's kind of different people like a gaffer and Spark who kind of organize that side of things. And then I'll be directing the DOP and the talent who kind of control the camera and stuff like that.
Yeah, I found that sometimes the location and the setup required for a photograph is very different to that maybe from that's required maybe for a video, because a video obviously like tells the story maybe over a few different scenes, and you've got cuts, you've got a reveal at the end. Yeah, you've got a completely different type of storytelling, whereas in photography you just need to have this one scene that actually tells everything. Yeah. How do you deal with that? Do you need to scout different locations, or do you really try to wrap it all into one location and try to produce everything in the same spots?
Yeah, it's I think you just got to be a lot more thorough with film. There's a lot more things to think about because you're telling more of a story with film instead of just one image. You have to kind of really look at locations thoroughly. So you'll go and do like a recce, which will a location recce to choose locations which will be right for the job. And then you do one more recce, which is called a technical recce, a tech rec. And that's where you're really working out where the lighting's going to go. Will it fit like a camera and the rigs that you want? Because you can pick like a location, which is great, but it might be too small to like add a big kind of like camera arm or a team and stuff like that. So there's a lot more to think about with film on location, I'd say.
Yeah, amazing that you managed to handle both, I think. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with color balance?
Yes. So the color balance was set up by my old agent, Virgilia Facey. It was set up to grow and develop inclusion of Black and POC photographers in the creative industry. I've been involved in the workshops with it. We set up workshops to support access and connect industry professionals to those seeking opportunities. So we've been doing a few workshops. I think we've done 2 now, where we set up kind of lighting, and we have a range of different people from different levels who are interested in photography or getting into the industry, and we go through how to kind of set up a light, to how to talk to a client, to the more technical sides of things about like digital capture and how like backing up works. And then Virgilia will be talking to the group about invoicing and how to like email clients. And then everyone who attends is then on a directory, like an assistant directory. Photographers can access that who are looking for assistance. And then the attendees get a list of photographers who we're in touch with to build up their contacts as well, and they can seek out assisting work. And yeah, it's been a great thing to be involved in. And I really every shoot I do now, I have one member of the color balance involved with my shoots as well, to give them opportunity to assist with me as well.
And do you bring a lot of your own experience as an assistant into those workshops?
Yeah, we're really kind of honest. I do it with Mike and John, who are both assisted as well. So between the 3 of us, we kind of explain and very honest about kind of how it is as an assistant and what is expected of you, because it's very hard to just turn up on a set if you've never had that opportunity to know how to act, to know not to just sit on your phone, or you know, to use your initiative and to kind of get involved. So we really try drilling that really, and super honest and kind of positive about it. And yeah, it's been really great, and hopefully we're going to set up some workshops. You can find more information about the color balance as well on the Instagram, which is just at @the_color_balance. And they've got an exhibition coming up, a virtual exhibition. So yeah, keep an eye on that as well.
Super. Yeah, I think it's so great to pass on your knowledge, to pass it on to the new generation of photographers. Because you can only learn by practice, by actually doing it, and by learning from the pros. I think it's really an amazing project you set up there. Before we start to take Q&As from the attendees, I'd like to ask you about maybe a few tips that you can give the new generation of the photographers, having talked about passing on knowledge, having talked about training and education. What would have you done? What would you have done differently, or if you could start all over again, or what were like the key moments in your career?
Yeah, I'll just show you a quick photo of me there assisting, not really knowing what I'm doing, to round things off. But yeah, the advice I'd give would be always take any opportunity there is. Like you heard about that Umbro job, it was a very small job, but that led on to a bigger job. I can link back any kind of my jobs to the smallest things I've done, whether it be like photographing a football, like 100 footballs in a studio over a late night, or kind of doing a favor for an agency. So yeah, definitely any kind of opportunity, no matter how small, always kick it open. Assisting is the key way into the industry, whether that be assisting a photographer, being a studio assistant. That is where the knowledge is kind of gained, and you kind of really kind of get to know how things are worked as an assistant in the industry. Listen and ask more questions. That's maybe something I would have done more. And yeah, and the main thing, just being nice to people, being a nice person. Yeah, and that would be my advice really.
Do you have any tips when it comes to approaching photographers for an assistant position?
Yeah, just say sending emails is great. Trying to get into studio assisting is really good, because you get to meet lots of photographers who come through the studio, and that's a great way. And just networking really, not being too keen. I have some assistants who like ring me up, which can be quite annoying. So yeah, kind of being keen but not overly keen. Yeah, I get some assistants who will send like their CV, which isn't really relevant. You just kind of, I don't know, being keen and interested in the work, and just saying you're up for anything really, and you're a hard worker. That's the main thing really. It's just a kind of hard work, and you're up for grafting.
Yeah, I think it's a really great piece of advice to consider working as a studio assistant. I have a few friends who in the end became like the first assistants, like of, you know, guys like Miles Aldridge, and they all started as a studio assistant. They really strategically positioned themselves into those studios, and it was maybe the job itself wasn't that great. Pay was, you know, relatively low. The work itself wasn't that great, like, you know, sweeping the floors, carrying in the equipment, making coffee. But ultimately, you're really like in the same, you know, you're in the gravitational field of those famous photographers, and it's a really great opportunity just to make contacts, to ask, you know, if you can help, exchange contact details, you know, becoming friends, inviting people for pints. It all worked like this. So in the end, they all ended up as first assistants for those superstar photographers. Yeah.
100%. Networking is key. Like, and that's one thing we drill in the color balance workshops, as there'll be like 20 attendees there, and we all say, you know, this is your network now, exchange numbers and get talking, because that's how it works. Like, if I needed an extra assistant, you'll ask someone who can recommend someone. So getting in that network and kind of, and that's what's great in the studio assisting kind of world. It's a big network. So yeah, definitely think that's a good route in there, because it's so diluted, the photography industry and assistant. So trying to get into a studio is great, even if it's just one day a week or something.
Super. Good. Thank you so much. An amazing presentation. Thank you. Anyone, if you have some questions to ask, if you have some questions that you would like to ask Tom, now's the time. Don't be shy. Yeah. As Tom has just said, it's so much about communicating. It's so much about you know, benefiting from each other's knowledge. Yeah. So don't be shy. If you've got any questions, then you can ask these now. Yeah. I've got one question myself, Tom. I'd like to ask you what is in the pipeline for you. Where do you see your career heading? Do you have any major changes plans, or do you rather want to specialize more and more into sports photography?
Yeah, it's quite a big question. Yeah, I guess I haven't got huge plans of any kind of projects at the moment. There's a few things I'm kind of starting to work on. I've just done my new website, which is quite a big thing. So I've been reflecting on work, doing that, which has been quite interesting, and kind of trying to feel like I'm finding my voice in certain ways in my work. So just trying to kind of hone in on the kind of areas I like to shoot. I do like to shoot sport, but I also love to shoot a bit more kind of commercial, kind of lifestyle stuff as well. So I'm trying to kind of get into that world as well. But yeah, it's ever evolving really.
Yeah, I feel lifestyle, like in the days of social media, is such a big thing. Like my German agent over the years, I'd say like nowadays the maybe 80% of the photographers, 70-80% of the photographers now are lifestyle photographers. And yeah, it's a really big thing now. I think that is the, you know, obviously like a lot of the impact that advertising has moves from classic advertising like billboards or print, magazines, etc., posters, really moves online, moves into social media. Yeah. And this kind of feel, like the feel of for real life, that is, I think, where lots of the budgets are at the moment. We've got Eunice asking about your choice of lenses, in particularly when you take portraits.
Yeah, I always like to shoot on prime lenses. That's the kind of, I try not to shoot on zoom. I think it makes you a little bit lazy. So I'd always suggest shooting prime lenses. I use a range of different cameras. So depending on what camera that is, whether it'll be the new Fuji or Phase 1 or Canon, I always tend to use the prime lenses. So that would be my advice.
I see. Yeah. And do you still shoot film, just out of interest?
Yeah, personally I do. I love to shoot film. I have been asked here and there to shoot it for commercial projects. I've got quite an interesting project coming up for Shelter, the charity, and we're going to try shoot that on film. So that would be quite fun. But yeah, something I like to do personally.
Yeah, there has to be a lot of trust, I guess, between the client and the photographer, because obviously you can't see. I see a lot of photographers when they shoot a commission on film that they've got a digital camera, almost a bit like a like a Polaroid camera in the olden days, yeah, or like a Polaroid bag, just to show the client, obviously, like also like as a tool of exploration for yourself, but also to show the client that you were actually like on the right track. But once you shoot film, the client has to trust you. Yeah. Do you get a buzz out of it? Because you simply don't know what you have.
Yeah, I think there is that unknown. A lot of my friends who shoot on film will always shoot kind of like a digital backup, and then shoot a couple of rolls each kind of look or whatever they're kind of shooting. But yeah, it's a whole different workflow really, and quite expensive. But yeah, I do like to shoot film where I can really.
Yeah, it's amazing to see really that there's it's almost like a revival of film photography, and it's amazing that this infrastructure still exists. Yeah. Good. So if you've got any more questions, everyone here, attendees, please then ask them now. Israel said she really loves your work, yeah, and that you took some great photographs. Thank you so much, Israel. We've got Rob asking, any sort of principles for lighting? Yeah. How do you tackle lighting? Would you characterize your lighting as a particular, like a cinematic type of lighting? Do you direct the light a lot, dark font, spotlight? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, kind of go through phases of what I like to use. I'm always trying to make things look fairly natural. Like some stuff you'll see like outside might actually be lit, but just kind of trying to emulate daylight really. Yeah, a lot of bouncing light and stuff like that really. But yeah, I don't really have a principle on my lighting, but I guess I have set ways of certain things I'll use, whether it be like a Elinchrom Opta or certain things I quite like to use, or a certain way I like to set up lighting, but that just comes in time and trying things out. So I just say, yeah, try out as many different lighting setups as you can and see what works and what reactions you get from that.
Yeah, I think trying to emulate daylight or ambient light is so incredibly difficult, don't you think? I mean, it's so difficult to actually make it look like daylight. Sometimes honestly, I spend hours in the studio trying to get this right, and it's so complicated. And as you said, I think it's all about polyboards, bouncing the light, really creating a really like a dirty light, like a complex light where the light bounces across the studio and creates this complexity. I think that daylight has in comparison to just one light shaper that is just such a clean light source, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of light testing yourself?
Yeah, like if we have the time, usually do like a pre-light where you kind of set up. If it's like a big commercial, do like a pre-light, and then if it's needed, we'll kind of do a test at my studio where I'm testing out a bit of lighting. Yeah, lighting's a big part of what I do really, and it's you have a great team around me who kind of help build up the lighting and stuff like that really.
We've got Israel asking another question. She asked if you have just 10 minutes to shoot a portrait like the one for Paul Smith, if you see the settings before, or if you have to find your feet quickly.
So let me just read that question. Yeah, I kind of, we test things, we get as ready as possible. Yeah, like with the camera kind of set to what it should be at. But yeah, it's kind of reacting, just being kind of ready to react to whatever, if the light's changing, ready to change the settings on the camera, if that's what you means. Yeah, kind of just being as prepared as possible really, having, say if it's a bit dark, having like a bounce or having a light on standby. So where you can have an assistant to kind of be ready with that to jump in.
Yeah, she asked, but would that be the first time you've been to the venue? She probably means like if you had a chance to recce the location beforehand.
Yeah, no. So for the Paul Smith one, no, we didn't. I researched what his studio looked like, but yeah, we weren't really sure what time we'd be able to get in and stuff like that. So yeah, it's always good to do a little walk around, and that's usually the way some assistant of the celebrity will like for Paul Smith, for instance, will guide you in the building and show you where's available to shoot. So you just have to be like, right, the light's going to be here. You're working it out, whether it be like a sun calculator or working out where the light's going to be, and just kind of making a small plan up as you go, really. But that comes through practice and kind of experience, really. The more you do it, the easier it kind of gets. But
yeah, and also I guess like getting rid of a lot of those distracting elements, to really find your angle, that really tells the message. Any more questions? Israel says, wow, she's hugely impressed. Good. Otherwise, have a lovely weekend, everyone. Thank you so much, Tom. I'm a huge fan of your work, and it was a really great pleasure to have you here on the talk. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and stay healthy, and hope to see you all for a beer soon.